just a dance. Talking about my generation. Just because we get around. Talking about my generation. Things they do look awful. Talking about my generation. I hope I die before I get old. Talking about my generation. This is my generation, baby. Why don't you all fade away? Don't try to dig what we all say. I'm not trying to cause a big sensation. I'm just talking about my generation. My generation. This is my generation, baby. Why don't you all fade away? Don't try to dig what we all say. I'm trying to cause a big sensation. Just talking about my generation. This is my generation. This is my generation, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Brad Behrens.
Hello, hello, hello. So thank you for coming. We have an exciting 3 back-to-back mini keynotes for you. And the woman who I'm going to bring up on stage in just a moment is going to explain the context of these events. And so I want to tell you a little bit about her. I had a great victory about 2 years ago. After 5 years of trying, I finally convinced Tamika Key to join the DMG content team. She's got a long history in the industry. She was a journalist with Media Post and paid content. She worked at Digiday. She worked in PR. She is got this digital ad industry in her bones, and she's been the on-point content director for this show, and we're going to have her come out and host this afternoon event. So let's give a big round of applause for Tamika Key. Tamika, come on out.
Sorry, I didn't know it was going up. Thank you.
Take it away.
I am really excited to introduce our think tank speakers to you because in the midst of all the networking and hustling, we also want to inspire you here. We also want to help you think differently. And I think these next 3 speakers are actually going to do that. So our first speaker is a man that almost needs no introduction, but I will tell you a couple of things about him. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he launched Buddy Media, a company that has helped pioneer the business of social media marketing management. Buddy Media then turned into one of the market leaders in the space and got acquired by Salesforce for $745 million. And now he's going to share a little bit of his secret sauce for success with all of you, and talk to you a little bit about how you too can win over the hearts and minds of your customers, your employees, and your partners. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Mike Lazerow, Chief Marketing Officer of Salesforce Marketing Cloud.
Thank you, that was so nice. And some of it was true. So great to see everyone, great to be in San Francisco. AdTech is one of those events I've been coming to for 86 years, so it's always good to come home to AdTech. I think it's one of really the only events today that's been around for as long as I could remember being in this business. And really what I wanted to talk to is something that I'm thinking about every day, which is how do you become a customer company? Now, I imagine that the first company that was started thousands of years ago, they were basically saying the same thing, we're a customer company. And it's not something that's a new idea, but there's some trends going on that everyone has to be a master of. And then how do you use those trends to really focus on connecting with that customer in a whole new way? And so I'm going to take you through kind of some of the trends and get very specific. And if you're a CMO, this is how you can become a customer company CMO. If you are a director, manager, an intern, This is what you need to pay attention to, I think, to really move up in your organization. So I'm no longer with Buddy Media, I'm with Salesforce. One of the great parts about being with Salesforce is it's a publicly traded company. This is our safe harbor statement. It is no longer dangerous, which I'm very excited about. And how many here were at CES this year, the Consumer Electronics Show? So not too many. If you walk around that show, it really speaks to what's going on. In the 60s, when computers were started, they're really all about the enterprise and research and universities, and there really wasn't anything that touched the consumer. As the internet took off and personal computing, you can now use these high-powered machines to make your life better. And then with the internet and social and the next evolution of local and mobile, some of the stuff I'm talking about, it's all about the customer. So when we look at the computing revolution, this is really a customer revolution. And so I'd urge everyone here to go to CES next year and go with the idea of what can you learn that's going to connect you to your customers, your partners, your products, kind of in this whole new way. Now, I spoke at the beginning about these trends that are going on. I don't think you have to be a master of every one of these trends and really understand them, but you really need to focus on which of these trends are you going to tap into to grow your business. And what's interesting is these aren't new ideas, social and mobile through the touch interfaces. How many here have a touch interface device? Pretty much everyone, right? A few years ago, no one had them. Big data, which we're kind of sick about. All of these ideas are ideas that you have to know. Some of them you have to master. But what's important is not that they're new ideas, but the idea that they're all working together. They're all working together to really drive how your consumers live, and then in return, how you have to kind of run your business. So the social revolution, I feel silly even putting it up here, but if you're not a master of social, I think you need to be a master of social. Touch revolution, this is all about touch anywhere. The devices that we're going to be using will not have a keyboard, will not have a mouse. It'll be using your hands, it'll be gesturing. And so how does this touch revolution play into your business? You look at this trend going from 0 a few years ago, right, to billions of devices sold every year. This is a local revolution. And when I say local revolution, it's not just about local commerce. It's about everything is hooked up to the internet and everything is geo-aware. So all of these devices, all of your consumers have location in their hand. And that device is telling the world where they are, when they were there, both providing them value and tracking them. How do we deal with that as an industry? Not just about delivering targeted promotions, but about tapping into how they live, which is local. And identity. How many here have a unified customer database? Raise your hand. Unified, just one. No one. We have silos of data all over the place. There's no way to identify a customer as a customer across every channel. That has to change. You have to get really serious about identity. Who is this customer? How do you recognize when they walk into your store? How do you recognize when they come to a website? How do you unify that? And you're going to do it through log in with Facebook, log in with Twitter and OAuth. On the business side, log in with Salesforce. Tapping into this not only identity revolution, but unambiguous identity, immutable identity. We are who we are. When we all started on the internet, I remember back to AOL Chat and CompuServe and eWorld. We were all anonymous. We were no better than the cookies that we're tracking today. Today, if you go to LinkedIn, if you log in with Facebook, you are on that site who you are in the real world. How do we tap into that? Big data. I almost didn't put it here, but the idea is we have to turn big data into small data. It's not about big data, it's about small data. What is that data that you can use as signals for your business that's going to help you make better decisions and drive your business forward? And how do you capture the data, filter the data, and use it? We're not in a world of information overload. We're not. There's tons of information out there. Your consumers have a ton of information. We're in a world of filter failure. It's not about the information overloading you. It's about your customers and your businesses not being able to filter that data, filter that information, and turn it into something that you actually can use, which is huge. We're in a community revolution. And this is not a community about let's just launch a community at www.whatever.com. This is about how do you build a sustainable community, a sustainable ecosystem that is an asset for your business, that defends you when things are bad, that sells for you when things are good, that you take everywhere you go. So this is community for your customers, obviously. It's community for your partners. How do you work with your partners better, and your vendors, and your agencies? And getting really serious about what it means to be a community. We're in an apps revolution. I'm not going to spend that much time here. 80% of the time we spend on our phones are with apps and not the web. As everything moves touch, everything becomes an app. Every company needs to have an app store. Every company needs to figure out how do they play in their consumer's pocket. That sounded bad. I didn't mean to say that, but that phone is in their pocket. You need to be there. If you're not there, you don't exist going forward. So it's not about being a mobile-first company. It's about being a mobile company. It's about being an apps company. It's about having an ecosystem. If I were to ask each of you, what are the APIs that you have exposed to let your community build on top of you, you should be able to answer that. What are you exposing to let others build on you, like Facebook and Google and Twitter and Salesforce and all of these companies have done for their community? And obviously, everything's moving to the cloud. And when I say this, it's not just from a business perspective, it's how we live. We live in the cloud. We expect everything to be in the cloud, not just our business documents, but now Boxy is cloud DVR. Your DVR is now in the cloud. Why do you need all those boxes all over your house or apartment? Why isn't it that your DVR is in the cloud, you access it anywhere? The companies that are trying to stop that are the companies that are going to die. Everything is moving to the cloud. Move your company to the cloud. Your employees are already living in the cloud. They're communicating with their families in the cloud. If you are not in the cloud, you will not exist. And I doubt there are any companies here who haven't started this journey. And lastly, if you're going to be in the cloud and you're going to be on the phones of your customers and you're going to be building community, you have to take part in this trust revolution. It's not about being perfect. Go look at the GM headquarters in Detroit. That is perfect. I don't know how they built it, but it's an incredible structure. It's American corporations at the height of power and perfection. Today, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say we screwed up. It's okay to say we are idiots, we are sorry, we will get better. Bill Clinton is one of our most popular presidents. He was impeached for having sex in the White House, right? He's one of those popular presidents. Tiger Woods, not so popular as an athlete. Why? They basically did the same thing. Bill Clinton was who he was. We didn't expect anything different, right? Tiger Woods was a phony. He went in People magazine, perfect family. Turns out he was a liar, right? So it's okay to embrace your imperfections. It's okay to say you made a mistake. And if you don't, there will be issues. So what this means is all of your employees are connected. All of your partners are connected. All of your vendors, all of your clients, all of your customers are connected. The question is, are you connected? Are you as a company connected to those groups? And the answer, if the answer is no, You have to start being connected, and that's what this is about. When I ask the question, how do you become a customer company CMO? The answer is through these connections. It's through connecting with your customers in a new way, connecting with your employees. They expect a world of bring your own device to the office, okay, and connecting how they want to connect. They expect to be able to use Facebook in the office. Connecting with your partners, your agencies, all of the companies that make you work, and connected products. It's a huge trend that you have to pay attention to. Would you buy a toilet connected to the internet? I would. I want to know when I have an infection, the day that I have a cancer cell in there. It notifies my doctor and it tells me I should come in. Right? We laugh at that, but that's happening. And within a few years, we all will have that. So how do you become a customer company CMO? Number one, and this is table stakes, you have to listen to every customer. I'm not saying you have to respond, but you have to listen to every customer. What are they saying? Where are they saying it? Who are they? Visualize that for your employees. A lot of our clients are putting these baby Jesus command centers right when you walk in. It basically shows everything that's going on in social for their products, for their employees, for the company, visualizing and showing the whole company that you are listening and you care. This is a mentality as much as an action. It's a strategy as much as a tactic. So, gotta listen, and then you have to engage. You have to engage on every channel. I look at a company like Burberry. If you call them through their customer service, you don't wait on hold. You write on Facebook, they're back to you within 20 minutes, every post. You tweet at them, they respond within 20 minutes. They're pushing content out on every channel. And using collaboration, they're connecting all of their retail employees to all their customers in store, connecting in store as well. So are you engaging across all of the channels that matter? Ask yourself that question and really figure out where you should invest. And it's not just about that customer. If you're going to connect with a customer, you have to coordinate. Who's doing what within your organization? What are the responsibilities? Who's managing Facebook across 100 countries? You look at a company like Unilever, they have 7,000 people on one collaboration platform, access to all of their assets that they need, and the ability to work together as a team and market better as a team. When they find stuff that's working, they're pushing it across all 200 brands. Daily communications in terms of what's going on. They've taken the amount of time to get stuff to market. It used to take 6 months to 8 weeks because they are coordinated, they are collaborating, they're sharing best practices, they're giving rewards to people who are excelling, and they're rewarding behaviors that they love, which is collaboration and not competition. Number 4, if you're going to be a connected CMO, if you're going to connect with customers in this new way, you have to service customers everywhere. It's not about where you want to be, it's about where your customers are, where they are today, how you work with them wherever they want to be. It's up to them to decide how they contact you. And so Activision, one of our clients, doing a great job. And you're thinking, you know, customer service, I'm a CMO. Why? I don't need to worry about customer service. Well, you know something? Service is marketing. If someone has a great experience with you, first thing they're going to do is tell their friends. Now, they have to at Activision. Young group, they have tons of active gamers. If you email them, they're back right away. If you call them, they're there. You can FaceTime with them anywhere in the world, get customer service, figure out your issue, and you're off and running. When you're playing a multiplayer game and you want to join it and things aren't working, you need help figuring it out. Okay, communities. You think community may not be for your business, you know, you've tried it in the past. That is not true. Every company has to build communities of their customers, could be Q&A communities, can be enthusiast communities, can be retailers working together to solve customer issues related to your company. How do you build communities in a way that you engage and build assets that really are going to drive the business? It's not just about forums where it's a bunch of information. It's about empowering that community with the information, with the content, with the concept that you're there, you care that they're there, and you're engaging. Number 6, okay, one of the biggest issues that we're seeing with our clients is agencies aren't connected. So you think about that Unilever example, or what GE's doing with their agencies and service professionals. If your marketing and your whole organization is collaborating, but you haven't connected your agencies, it's not going to work. Agencies have even more important seat at the table today, where content is the ad and ad is the content. And many of our clients and many of you need global scale and local scale. And so how do you work with agencies as if they're in your business? The best relationships, I think of Ford and Team Detroit, among others that I could name. The teams work as if they're one company. And you do that by connecting with partners in a whole new way. Number 7, and something that I'm really excited about, is connected products. We're in a world that every product, the expectation will be, is connected to the internet. Your watch is connected to the internet. When you go to Six Flags, you swipe a device and it says you like that ride on Facebook. Every product that you buy will be connected to the internet. It costs 99 cents to put a chip in the product. Why is it that when I lose my luggage, the company doesn't immediately say, I have a chip in that, your luggage is on the freeway, I've called the police, we'll have the bag back to you? Is that marketing? Is that product? Who knows? But if I get my bag back, I'm the happiest person in the world. Right? So how do you use connected products to deliver simple promises to customers that you could stand behind? And that's really what connected products are about. That you don't connect your toilet just for the hell of it. You connect it to save your life. Right? You connect it because it's the right thing to do for the customer. And whoever beats Kohler and all these big companies are not going to create a better ceramic toilet. They're going to connect it and save people's lives and tell those stories. How do you tell the stories? Marketing. It all comes back to you. You're the agent of change at the company. Now, all of this that I've talked about, social, local, mobile, connected products, it's all tied to an app. You have to be an app company. You have to be able to access information. You have to be able to work together. You have to be able to connect with your employees anytime, anywhere. You go to CES and the Canon camera is connected to the internet. You press a button on your iPhone, it takes a picture. You need that connected to your customer service back end. And so think of the idea that, why is it that I can't get 200 yards from the airport and Delta just says, instead of me going there, they say, hey, you want to check in? Yes. Are you hungry? Yes. Here are the food options. Enjoy your flight. Great use of an app and local and mobile and social, all of this stuff working together. So hopefully as you come out of this with some ideas, think about how you can connect to your customers, how you can bring in your employees, how you can connect to your partners, and finally, how you can create connected products that drive your business forward as a competitive advantage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. As I said, hopefully he made you think. That's why we call them think tanks. Our next speaker is a digital marketing powerhouse. She has over 2 decades of experience in the industry, 16 years of experience at HP, 2 years of experience at Moxie Interactive, leading lots of digital teams. She also just wrote a book recently and will be doing a book signing after the show. Without further ado, I introduce Daina Middleton, Global CEO of Performics.
Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming today. Very much appreciate you coming to talk about something that I'm extremely passionate about. You have to be extremely passionate to write a book these days. It's not an easy process. So before we get started, I just thought I'd talk a little bit about who I am and what I do. So I run Performics. For those of you who don't know Performics, we've been around for quite some time, since 1998. We are probably, arguably, the largest performance marketing company in the world today. And we provide an integrated suite of a variety of performance solutions for some great clients around the world. I have 20 offices all around the globe, so I'm constantly on the road, but it's great to be here in San Francisco today talking to you about the Nurturist. So to set this up, what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about the environment that all of you know so well because you're actually living in it today. So the essence of what I'm going to talk about today is how. And I think more than just marketers, all companies are starting to recognize that how they go about doing things is just as important, or maybe more important, than what they do. And there are two things that I think are important to think about in the context of how we're living in this world today. This has all been driven by change, because everything around us is changing rapidly. And the two key change themes that I want to focus on today, the first one is participant expectations. So you will not hear me use the word consumer, and that's very deliberate. It's not because I don't believe in consumerism. It's not because I'm not an advocate for the consumer, because I am and have been for a long time, but because language is really important to us as marketers. And if we want to change our behavior, change how we do things, then we need to start with our language. So at Performics, nobody uses the word consumer. They happen to use the word participant. I don't mind if you use that or something else, but that's important. And the real key here is participant expectations have changed, and so we'll talk about that. And because of those changes, and because of the really changing environment that we live in today, we really need to change not only our marketing approach, but our organizational approach from a brand standpoint. So, to kick us off, let's start here and talk about this whole world, the world that I grew up in as a marketer. So I've been a marketer over 20 years now. And our role in life was to persuade someone to change their perception about something. And this really started 50 or 60 years ago. Transportation and information were difficult in those days. 3 ads in 1960 on television, you would hit 85% of your target audience. Those days are over. You don't have uninformed consumers. Our role is not to persuade someone to think differently. So that's the first key theme I want you to think about. The second one is the fact that experiences are really blurring in the world that we live in today. So this isn't just true for offline to online, but also the real world and the virtual worlds are combining at a dizzying pace. And so people have tools. You just heard about this and talked about this and listened to the fact that we all have tools in our pocket and at our disposal to find out all kinds of information. But the key thing for marketers to remember is our job is to create some form of action. And that action can depend on what our goals and objectives are. So action is really the key. We want to inspire people to take action. So this shifting expectation, let's start with a participant, because we all should start with a participant. If this is the individual that we want to motivate, we need to understand how they think. And the first thing is, because we're all trained, we have so much technology at our access, everything should be searchable and findable. All content should be at our fingertips instantaneously. They have little tolerance for something that isn't. They want to connect with others who have similar interests than they do. There's an interesting dynamic happening as well, and that's the definition of advertising is changing. So I look at my kids who are 25, 23, and almost 20. And their definition of advertising is very different than my definition of advertising was when I was growing up. If they have a value exchange or if they perceive a value exchange, that's not advertising to them. That's content. And they want to be heard. They want to have a dialogue with the brand. You heard earlier about authenticity, transparency. That is the new expectation in the world that we live in. But this isn't easy for marketers. So suddenly ROI, return on investment, is really important, especially with the downturn of the economy, not just here, but across the world. So when I was a marketer for 16 years at HP, and if I made a bad decision around a marketing investment, I would think, gosh, I'll learn from that and not do it again. Today, marketers are afraid because there probably could be 10 people standing in line waiting for their job. So ROI is important. Going beyond just reach is also important. What type of behaviors do these people have in mind? So it's important to think beyond the old ways of thinking about just reach media. Product placement is important. This is back to this real world, virtual world thing. What is marketing? What isn't? It's complex. And they need to make more than just an impression, more than just a click. It needs to be engaging. But what does engaging mean exactly? And they want to listen and have a dialogue with the participant, but that's really scary because there's this perceived control. Everyone perceives that if I do that, I'm going to let go of control, even though it's more of a perception than an actual reality. So CMOs are well aware of all of these issues, and there's actually an interesting study online. You're welcome to check it out. They've actually made it very interactive and participative, which is great. You can, if you are a CMO, you can actually still participate in the study. It goes on. But they're recognizing that really marketing needs to be more than just about a transaction. It needs to be about a relationship. And they also talk about the fact that they don't really have the tools, the processes, the language, the approach to actually make that shift into more relationship marketing. So my mantra is marketing through participation should be what we are really focusing on. We're moving from persuasion to participation. But if that's our new goal, if that's what we should be focusing on, then what is it that we should understand? Because I think we all knew how we needed to be the great persuaders. What is that single-minded proposition? What is that higher level emotional benefit that we should tell people or broadcast to people? That's what we used to do. But now we have to think about it a little bit differently. It's not just about sending someone a message and persuading them. It's about getting them to interact with it. It's about getting them to take actions on our behalf. So this is kind of how we view the world at Performics in this new realm. So if there's no hierarchical status between a brand or a marketer and what used to be called the consumer or the participant, they have equal roles and equal value in the relationship. So think of these as two spinning spirals that are constantly spinning. So the brand has constantly spinning content or information that's valuable to the participant. The participant is constantly seeking, constantly reaching out, trying to find that information. We believe that our role as an agency at Performics is really those connection points. How do we make sure that they map up and that there's value on every spoke of every wheel for that brand and for the participant both? And that our role as a marketer is really to invite participation and add value. And our role is to nurture connections at every point. What's most interesting to me about this whole notion is the primary metaphor for our industry is, and you can blame Jack Trout and Reese for this in their book, The Positioning, I think is where it's most dominant, is war. So think about that. Every word we use, all the language that we use associated with our industry is war related, which is, you know, we take aim at our target market. We capture or defend market share. we gain shelf space, we attack our competition, we engage in guerrilla tactics, and we win customers. But if our new role is really to nurture connections, then the war metaphor has got to go. And if we really want to inspire participation, instead of just persuasion, turns out actually there is a formula for that. And this formula is laid out in my book. It's called the Participation Way. It's not a formula that I necessarily invented with no basis. So one of the reasons it took me a couple years to write my book is I was looking for a science behind this whole notion. So we had a lot of science in our industry before that was describing how do we change people's perceptions. But if our new role is really to motivate and inspire participation, what is the right science behind that? And I landed on a science called self-determination theory, or intrinsic motivation. It's been around for a long, long time, actually hundreds of years. From an industry standpoint, it's mostly been applied to education, it's been applied to human resources, but it hasn't been applied to marketing because it really didn't make sense to do so until now. And there are three elements. They're based on the self-determination principles of competency, autonomy, and relatedness. And I've just transferred and translated them into a formula. It's not a scientific or mathematical formula. I work with a company that's very literal, left-brained people, which is fantastic. But this is not meant to be quantifiable mathematically. Rather, it's put in a formula notion so that it's easy to remember. So discovery is really about the fact that people, humans, love to continually learn. And they love to have information, and probably more important, they love to become competent about something. And this is, us as marketers, we've been very good at this for a long time, because those are tied to persuasion. If you want to persuade someone to change their opinion, they need information to do that. So this one we do relatively well. Although I'm not sure we always go to the full effect of helping people become competent. And they certainly have the tools at their disposal today to become competent. But you just can't do that in the environment if you want to inspire or motivate participation. And if you think about it from your own perspective, it makes sense. So if you're going to join something, you want to have a meaningful role, which is where the E comes in, which is really about empowerment. It's based on the self-determination theory of autonomy. So the fact that it's not so much that you care about the outcome of the choice, but you want to have a choice. So how do you inspire and empower people to become part of the product or service you're creating? How do you empower them to even become involved in their marketing program? And more brands, I think, are doing this and doing it relatively well. And the last C is around connectedness. So this relates to relatedness, the fact that we as humans love to interact with one another and love to connect with others who have similar passions. So if you do those things, if you create an environment that has all three of those variables, then you are more likely to have participation. And what happens in today's environment if you have participation? People take action, and actions equate into performance. So from there, with this basis, I'm going to go into what are some things that you can do in your organization to help facilitate the new Nurturist marketer, if you will, which again is much more of a gardening metaphor than it is a war metaphor. And there's 5 rules of things that I think are really important to remember in this space if you really want to create programs that really think about this whole philosophy and are grounded in this philosophy. They're embracing testing and learning values, not perfecting, and you already heard a speaker talk a little bit about that, but innovating, acting quickly and motivating others, mixing and blending, so mixing and blending things from other places, and lastly, embracing failure in the pursuit of results. So I'll spend a little bit of time on each one of these. So the first one is embracing the test and learn values. So from a client perspective, some of our more innovative clients are actually taking 10 to 30% of their overall marketing spend, and they're investing that spend into testing and learning programs. And that's really important because in today's environment, there's actually economists are talking about the fact that cycles are shorter and shorter. And this goes back to some of the change that's happening with us. So I talked about the fact that we don't have barriers of communications, we don't have barriers of transportation anymore. And that's causing cycles to rise fast and actually quickly drop off. So as organizations, we need to adapt to that and actually capitalize on the fact that we need to ride those trends as quickly as possible. And the only way to do that and scale in any type of meaningful way is to actually dedicate some testing and learning value in your company. Dedicate the budget to it so that when something starts to diminish, you have several other things in the queue. You can quickly scale those and move on in a continual cycle. And coming from a big company, I recognize how difficult this is. This means changing the way that budgets are planned for in organizations. It's really a different mindset. The second one is innovate, don't perfect. So I grew up, again, from a marketing standpoint and was taught that there was this big idea and I must find this perfect big idea that if I don't find it, I will fail. And because things are moving so much faster, I would recommend not landing on a big idea. Big ideas are great, but you could have 10 great ideas that can outpace your competitor. And more of our revolutionist clients, as we talk about them, are doing this very well. They're constantly innovating. They're constantly trying things out, a little bit related to the test and learn. They're not spending months and months and months trying to find the perfect thing. The third rule, act quickly, motivate others. Speaks for itself, right? So if you do find what's going on, if you're not necessarily spending time perfecting, move quickly. The world is moving faster and faster. We all need to figure out ways to better innovate and use tools to better innovate so that we can move quickly, outpace our competitors, and motivate others to do so. And the great thing about our space is data is actually allowing us to do this. Mix, blend, and don't create. There are many examples in nature of where innovation is important, but it doesn't have to be all your own. Leveraging a certain technology, leveraging information and ideas from other places, building on that and moving on, also a key criteria for being effective in this new world. And lastly, embracing failures in the pursuit of results. We had a great marketer who's a client of ours who has a fantastic catalog that they drop twice a year, and they recognize the significance of this catalog because it becomes almost like a coffee table item. But they also recognize that literally 2 weeks after the catalog drop, there is a period where they could really capture demand, but in order to capture that demand, they would absolutely have to ruin their efficiency for search in order to do that. So our team, as well as the client, took 5 different tactics, and they failed 5 times trying to figure out what that fine balance of capturing that demand but not ruining that efficiency was. And the great thing was we had a client who was willing to go through that failure process, but the end result of actually finding something that worked well was well worth it. It actually paid in dividends for them because they were able to capture that demand very efficiently. But the cool thing is they had a company culture around risk and failure, and it was okay, and those employees felt safe, and we felt safe as a partner in that process. So 4 questions to ask yourself. Is your company Nurturist friendly? What percentage of your budget is test and learn? Do you have governance models in place to overcome the organizational barriers? This is important because in this new world of participation, participants don't care what department you necessarily work in. So you as an organization have to figure out how you compensate for that. And our best clients are putting governance models in place to help compensate for those barriers. Do managers in the company and leaders champion innovation, speed to action, and risk? And those are a lot easier to say than do. Totally understand that. Are partnerships welcome? Are you looking constantly for new partners? So in closing, the participation age is here to stay. And as I mentioned, marketing through persuasion is out, and marketing through participation is in. and there is a formula for that. Our new metaphor, let's get out with war and in with gardening, if you're looking for a substitute. And Nurturists require more than just changes to marketing. They require organizational changes in values in order to thrive. So I hope you enjoyed that. Reach out if you have questions, and thank you today.
So we talked about connected toilets. We talked about changing the way we talk about marketing from war to gardening. And now we're going to talk about the future. I'm super excited to bring out our next presenter because I think he has the best job in the world. He literally gets to predict the future. His job at Intel is to predict how people are going to be using technology over the next 10 to 15 years and help them develop products that enable that to happen. And he uses marketing research, he uses technology research, he even uses science fiction books and novels to help predict this future. And so he's actually going to talk to you today about how you can change the future for your clients, for yourselves, as well as for the rest of the world. And I'm proud to bring out Brian David Johnson, Intel's chief futurist.
So much. Hey, everybody. So I'm not a marketer. I am a futurist. And today, I want to tell you a very personal story. And it will lead back around. We're gonna go off into the weeds a little bit, but it'll lead back around to something that I think for you and for what you do and for the reason why you've gathered here at AdTech, I think you'll find interesting. And I think ultimately you'll find it very important. And the story I'm going to tell you is the story of how I learned to change the future. So if you look at my first slide, if you read it very closely, it says that I work for a very large company and we have a lot of lawyers. Okay, I did that, right? You got that? You saw that? Okay, good. So, as I was saying, I am a futurist. I am the chief futurist at the Intel Corporation. It's my job to look 10 to 15 years out and model how people will act and interact with technology. Essentially, what it will feel like to be a human 10 to 15 years from now. Now, that might sound a little bit far-fetched, but for Intel, it's actually incredibly pragmatic, because you see, at Intel, it takes about 5 to 10 years to make the chip, to make our product. So it's of vital business importance today for Intel to understand what people will want to do a decade from now. I'm a principal engineer at the company. I very specifically sort of write up documents that get very, very exact about what we need to build. I just finished up working on the 2019 platform, and I'm now working on the 2021 platform. But you can pretty much tell everything you need to know about me personally by looking at this picture. So the tall, bald, funny-looking one on the left is me. The really good-looking little guy is Arthur. Hopefully you can tell us apart. I labeled them so you could tell. Arthur is the first robot that was ever created at the University of Essex. I do a lot of work with robotics and a lot of work with artificial intelligence. So as I say, when you look at this picture, you can pretty much tell everything you need to know about me, evidenced by the fact that I went all the way to the United Kingdom and had my picture taken with a 2-decade-old robot. You can rest assured, I am a geek. I am a huge geek. Now, I should say, I think I was born a nerd. My first job when I was 10 years old was working at a computer lab at the local college. I actually was taking computer classes, and I was actually teaching economics students how to use computers. This was a long time ago, back when we called them personal computers because you could lift them by yourself. This is back right when the rooms were filled with mainframe computers. And so I was that sort of the weird, nerdy little kid who always had a science fiction book right on his finger. And so I would be working and I'd help people do that, and then I'd always have the science fiction. And I was the type of kid, which you can tell that I'm a dyed-in-the-wool geek, is that I was the weird little kid who always rooted for the robots. Right? In science fiction, I always wanted the machines to win. It's true. So I think I was pretty much born this way. And in my job as a futurist, this is kind of what propelled me there, is sort of I love technology and I love science fiction and all these things that we might be able to do with the future. And in the work that I do today, this graph kind of can show you probably the most important thing that I see kind of coming on the horizon. And what this shows is that as we look out to the year 2020, as we look a decade out into the future, the size of meaningful computational power, so the size of the chip, begins to approach 0. Now, I should tell you, that was a geek test. If I said the size of meaningful computational power approaches 0 and you got goosebumps, you're a geek. Now, if you didn't get goosebumps, that's cool. Believe me, you're going to have an awesome life. You'll probably have a social life. You might even get to see the sun. I don't see the sun very much. No, but the reason why I think this is important, because it fundamentally changes the question that we have to ask ourselves when we're making technologies and services and the things that will touch the lives of people. Because for decades, we had to ask ourselves, can we do it? Can we take a mainframe computer and get it on somebody's desk? Can we get a desktop small enough to fit on somebody's lap? Can we get a laptop small enough to fit in somebody's pocket or their pocketbook? It was always, can we do it? But when you have the size of meaningful computational power approaching 0, you have to ask a very different question, because you can actually turn anything into a computer. We could turn these chairs into computers. We could turn my jacket into a computer. We could even turn my body into a computer. We don't have to ask, can we do it? We have to ask, what? What do we want to do, and why? Now, hopefully, this is big enough so you guys can probably see. I love this graphic. I don't know if you can see the woman in the 60s. She actually has a bouffant hairdo. And you've got the dude from the 1970s who has bell-bottoms on. Can anybody, here's bonus points, can anybody figure out who is depicted in the year 2010? This then, Steve Jobs. So this then shows whoever said that is far more intelligent than I am. Because I actually got this graphic and I didn't figure it out. I actually figured it out on stage in front of a room of 1,000 futurists. And I called my graphics folks and I said, that's Steve Jobs. And they're like, yeah, we know. It took you so long to figure it out. Futurist. So, but what is so important to me is that we are reaching a point in time when we can literally turn anything into a computer. We will be living in a world where we are surrounded by computational intelligence. Now, I think this brings about a new set of problems and a new way of looking at the world. This is a quote actually from the Chief Technology Officer at Intel, who I do a lot of work with at Intel. He's our chief geek, basically. He's our uber geek. He's the geek of 100,000 geeks. And when he said this, it really struck me, being a geek, but also it struck me because you have somebody who comes out of supercomputing, has the chops of an engineer, and he actually said that science and technology have progressed to the point where what we build is only constrained by the limits of our imagination. Incredibly powerful statement. That it's not our science, it's not our technology, but it's actually our imaginations. That's what's holding us back. It's our inability to imagine a different future. That what is holding us back is our capability to envision different futures and where we might go. Ugh. Now what do we do? So we're living in a world where we can pretty much build anything. What do we do? So if we say our imaginations aren't good enough, what do we do? Then I remembered back to that little 10-year-old geek I was telling you about. I was like, I know what we can use. Science fiction. Now you can imagine that little 10-year-old to me was like, yay! we can actually use science fiction and this type of thinking to get us to imagine different futures. Because science fiction is the playground of the imagination. Science fiction, based on science fact, actually gives us the language to have a conversation about the future. Now, let me give you an example. And I've done this before, and this is very risky, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to zero in on you, sir. Now, if I wrote a science fiction story based on synthetic biology, I'm not a synthetic biologist. Are you, sir, a synthetic biologist? Okay, he said no. I have been places where they said yes. And actually, as I say, I am not a synthetic biologist. You, sir, are a synthetic biologist. Well, yes, I am a synthetic biologist. I went, oh, great. So anyway, are you a synthetic biologist? Anyway, but if I give you a science fiction story based on science fact that envisions a future around synthetic biology, we can now have a conversation about that. Do we like that future? Is that future awesome? Does that future freak us out? What is it like? So this provides us these tools to have conversations about the future. And I'm a firm believer that everybody needs to be an active participant in the future. Being a futurist, I always get lots of questions about how do I prepare for the future. Everybody's sort of worried about the future. They sort of sit there and think about the future as maybe as this wild, crazy spider monkey that's coming at them. And if they're not ready for it, it's going to take them out. But the future doesn't work like that. The future isn't an accident. The future is built every day by the actions of people. We all build that future. And so having these conversations around science fiction, having these conversations about the futures that we're seeing becomes incredibly important to fuel the products, the services, and the things that we build. We need to ask ourselves, what kind of future do we want to live in? That's how we begin to envision and get over that deficit of imagination, our inability to imagine a different future so that we can then go and build it. So you can imagine, again, going back to that nerdy 10-year-old kid in the computer lab, right? So now I'm a futurist and I'm working at Intel and it's awesome and I get to work with all this technology and all these really smart people and I'm even using science fiction. Everything was great, right? Everything was awesome. And then something happened. Then I met this guy. This is a picture of James H. Carrot. James is a cultural historian. Being a historian, he thinks a lot and gets his pictures taken as if he's in the past. He's actually my age. So I'm sitting down and having a chat with him up in the Pacific Northwest where I'm from. We're having a beer. And I'm telling him about all this sort of stuff, that we're using science fiction based on science fact, and we're envisioning the futures, and we're going to go and build these awesome futures because we need to talk about what's the future, what kind of future do we want to live in? And he said to me, wow, that's great. But you do know you're missing 50% of the story, right? I was like, what do you mean? He said, I completely agree that imagination is the deficit. We need to be able to imagine different futures, but there's a whole thing you're missing out on. And I was in. I was like, oh, what is it? Tell me. And he said, it's this. It's history. I was like, what? He said, Brian, history is just as malleable as the future. As we begin to imagine our futures, we can also imagine our pasts. And he showed me an example. He was talking about steampunk. Who knows what steampunk is? Does anybody understand? Okay, some of you know. It's okay. It's a subculture that imagines 21st century technology back in the Victorian era. So what these folks are doing is they're playing around with the past. They're using technology. They love technology. They love their iPhones and their iPads and the internet. They love all these things, but they're using them to play with their past. What James says is that he did a lot of work with subcultures and countercultures like the Beats and the hippies, and he said to be a beatnik, you had to go to Greenwich Village. If you wanted to be a hippie, you had to go to Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. If you want to be a steampunk, you just go online. That it's this movement that actually comes out of this technological evolution that we've been going through. It actually allows people to participate. And so I said, oh, that's fascinating. So it's all about people playing around with the past. And I said, so if we're playing around with the past, doesn't that mean they want a different future? Oh. That question changed my life. We then set off on this investigation around steampunk. So you have really does sound like a bar joke, right? A culture historian and a futurist walk into a bar and ask, what can steampunk teach us about the future? It actually happened. Truth is stranger than fiction. And when we turned it into this project, it's called Vintage Tomorrows. We ended up writing this book. We actually ended up spawning multiple books and even a documentary that's based upon the book as well. But the whole idea that we were looking at is what we realized was going on. What we could learn from this playing around with the past was that people wanted a radically different relationship with their technology. That if you grow up with a smartphone in your pocket, or now, if you live your life with your smartphone on your bedside stand, or even many people sleep with their smartphones under their pillow, you have a very different relationship with technology than we did back in those days when a personal computer was called a personal computer because you could lift it by yourself. It's a radically different relationship. And so what we discovered was that steampunk was teaching us something going on in the subculture that was even happening in our popular culture today. That people wanted this radically different relationship with technology. They wanted their technology to have a sense of humor, right? Humans are funny. Why wouldn't our technology that's getting so smart, why couldn't it just tell us some jokes, right? Why couldn't it make us laugh? They also learned that people wanted their technology to have a sense of humanity. They wanted it to be built by people, and they wanted it to be built for them. They wanted it to be customized and personalized, and all the interactions to be personalized to them and to know them. But most importantly, we learned that people wanted their technology to have a sense of history. That people use history literally as the on-ramp to the future. And so playing around with history becomes really important. History becomes a way for us to figure out where we're going in the future, and it allows us to ask, I think, this very important question: what kind of past do you want to be from? So for me, this sort of sets up this really interesting way of thinking about the future and thinking about the things that we do and the devices that we build and the services that we make, is that you have to look in both directions. You have to look towards the future and ask yourself where you want to go and the futures that you want and the futures that you want to avoid. But you also have to ask, what is the history that you want to be from? What is that bedrock that you can build on to actually have an on-ramp to the future? So ultimately, this led me to this question: how do we change the future? Now, I take my job as Intel's futurist very seriously. I realize that if I do my job correctly, I will touch the lives of every human being on the planet. So it's a big deal. So it's some serious business. So I sort of traveled around the world talking to different people, asking this question. And I got a lot of pushback. People were like, well, who are you? Why do you think Intel should be building the future? And you as a futurist, what gives you the right? And I was like, no, I understand all of that. That's not what I'm saying. But if the future is built every day by the actions of people, what do we do? How do we do it? And I was in London talking with Cory Doctorow, who's one of the founders of Boing Boing and a science fiction author and an activist. And we hit upon a very, very simple answer to this. So how you change the future is you change the story that people tell themselves about the future that they will live in. Completely simple, but really, really difficult at the same time. If you can change the story that people tell themselves about the future that they will live in, you will change their actions. They will see a different future. They will make different purchase decisions. They will make different education decisions. They will make different policy decisions. That it can have this huge effect on every person on the planet. And that the way that you make that change, the way that you change that story, is through conversations. It goes back to the use of history and the use of science fiction as a platform for conversations. But the reason why I was so excited to come here today and speak with you is that's what you do. You are in the conversation business. As you can see from my fellow presenters today, you are in the business not only of having conversations with humans and customers and people and clients, but you're in the business of narrative. Right? You're in the business of telling people stories. You're in the business of creating experiences for people around products and services. You actually have the power to change the future. And I would argue, simply because you're here today, you will change that future. Because you came to this thing called think tank, that you will change the future of yourself, of your family, of your businesses, of your community, even of the world. But you have to make the decision. Irregardless of what you decide, you will change the future. But the question becomes, what will you do? And it's my humble request to ask you to not just do good business, do great work for your clients, make a lot of money, that's awesome. But I think one of the things that should drive us all is, as we go out there, we have the ability now to change the future. The one thing I want to ask you to do is not only go out there and touch the lives of people, but figure out how to make their lives better and set that bar higher. Because now you have the power to change that future. You've seen it. You now know how to do it. You just need to change the story. My question is, what are you going to do about it? Now, my final slide comes with a little bit of story. When I was coming up through industry, I was a speechwriter. I wrote speeches for my executives. And one of the executives that I wrote for always had me include pictures of dogs playing poker in all of his presentations. I was young and I did not ask why. I said yes. And I got really good at it. I would put pictures of dogs playing poker on TV. I would put pictures of dogs playing poker in these picture frames, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? The dog with the little bulldog, and he's got the little card in his toe. So finally, we were parting ways. I was moving on to a new company, and he was leaving the country. And I finally got up the nerve to ask him, so why do we have to include pictures of dogs playing poker in every presentation? And he laughed at me and he said, Brian, people love pictures of dogs playing poker. Why wouldn't you put in a picture of dogs playing poker? And he's right. So I've taken on that tradition, I've taken on that mantle. But in all of my presentations, I don't include pictures of dogs playing poker. What I do include are pictures of animals using technology. The longer you look at this, the more freaked out you're going to get. Thank you so much for having me today. This is where you can find me. Have a good conference.
Thank you so much, Brian. So hopefully we have helped make you think a little bit differently about your audience, about the industry, and even possibly about yourself. We have a great rest of the day lined up for you. We have breakout sessions that are happening now, Startup Spotlight, among other things. We also have Brian and Dana will be doing a book signing shortly on the second level. And then if you stick around with us after 3, there's the social media extravaganza happening called Under the Influence. Lots of stuff still more on the expo floor. And that's it. Thanks.